The high-grade Typheus Gundam Chimera is exactly that. Like the Chimera of Greek legend, this is multiple Gundam model kit beasts in one. A combination of 2010's Raphael Gundam from Gundam 00, 2015's Kutan booster from Iron-Blooded Orphans, and a yet unreleased Psycho Gundam Mk.II from probably later this year. All of which has been given a very Gundam Build veneer in gold, red, and black. Visually, this kit is a mixed bag, a monolithic high-grade standing at almost a foot tall. This is undoubtedly one of the most unique-looking high-grades of all time. But getting close, and we do have a lot of old-school issues, especially on the Typheus Gundam itself. And that injection gold definitely has a bit of a cheap feel about it. If you like a Gundam kit with options, the Chimera provides. At its core, we have the Typheus Gundam, which can use various accessories on its own, the Kutan Twin Dragon, which can be displayed separately, and a whole host of attack options that can be used with the final fusion, the Chimera. Build-wise and articulation-wise, this kit is better than expected and worlds better than the last large Gundam build offering, the Re-Rise Gundam. The Typheus Gundam itself is a bit dated. The brand new Psycho Gundam Mk.II arms are nice but not perfect, but funnily enough this gels all together into something that really does work out. It's fairly solid for the most part, and you will get some nice poses in the end. Personally, I thought this kit right here was going to be a disaster, but it did surprise me. Coming in at silver tier, it's definitely not an unmissable kit or one that has revolutionized the hobby, but its pure, unadulterated, unabashed Gundam build-ness makes this something incredibly different. It looks ridiculous, and it's a whole lot of fun. Hey, what is up everyone? Welcome back to another Gunpla review, and today I'm taking a look at this absolute mammoth of a kit, and once again, Bandai has done it again. What is with that name? So, this right here is the Typheus Gundam Chimera, if you want to call it that, but this is one of those names, once again, that has multiple pronunciations. Typhoeus, in Japanese there, it's Typhoeus. Typhoeus. I'm just gonna go with Typheus for the sake of, well, simplicity. Anyway, if you do want one of these absolute chimeric monstrosities of your own, I got mine as usual through Hobby Link Japan, and the link will be down there in the description. Now, what can I say? Let's just jump right into it and see what this Chimera has to offer. So jumping right on back to the beginning, then this is an absolute colossal box. Now, €60 or $60 is the going price for this particular kit right here, which does seem a little bit steep at first for a high-grade kit, but there is a lot going on inside of it. We've got an absolute whole ton of runners, and just like the box says, or the name of this Gundam implies, this is a Chimera through and through. So this is a combination of three different, well, you could say mobile suits and mobile armors, but when it comes to actual PLA, this is a mix of three Gundam kits with a little bit of the build fighter's flair thrown on top. So those particular three kits are the high-grade Raphael Gundam from Gundam 00, Awakening of the Trailblazer. That is the main body of the actual kit itself. So the mobile suit inside of the mobile armor is heavily based on that unit. The next kit that makes up a large part of the mobile armor round back of this is the high-grade long-distance transport booster Kutan from Iron-Blooded Orphans. That big old thing that straps onto the Barbatos can also be attached onto the Grazes. A pretty cool kit for expanding those particular suits. Finally, and probably the most exciting aspect of this kit, is those big old arms that you might at first go, hey, that's just the high-grade Psycho Gundam. Not quite. You might also go, hey, those are the high-grade Psycho Gundam 1.5 arms we would have seen on the Hazel Gigantic arms. That's what I thought. Not true. These are actually Psycho Gundam Mk.II arms on Psycho Gundam Mk.II runners, as in a kit that does not exist yet. Now don't get too excited, that's an absolutely awesome massive Gundam, but more than likely we're going to get hit with that being Premium Bandai. But if we're lucky, that won't be the case. We'll also mention it's a little bit jank up in the shoulders, but that's a story for another time. There are also stickers inside of this box, but these aren't the worst. For the actual unit itself, these are just really for on the eyes and head cameras as usual. We've got a reflective one for inside of the chest and some for inside of some recessed parts to add a little bit of black. That is all. When it actually comes to the bigger unit round back, it's just some black for inside of the golden thrusters up on the shoulders. So the stickers, not bad at all. Now, once this was all finished, I decided to give it a little bit of panel lining just to kind of take out some of the details so you can actually see them, especially against the gold and the red where they can be a little bit lost. Now, when I actually came to the big old booster, I saw Ramba giving me some advice in the instructions right here, so I decided to listen to him. He said to use these orange label Gundam markers. These are the Sumi-Ire kind. They're kind of like a big felt tip marker that you kind of blob onto the surface and then you wipe the rest away. These are very, very quick. I'm not a huge fan because I find they're quite messy and the panel lines aren't the nicest, but I gave them a try just because, well, Mr. Ral recommended them. In the end, this right here is what we got, so it's time to move right on into the aesthetics. Now, first off, I'm going to go with the actual Typheus Gundam itself, so you can take a look at that. We'll build on the booster later on and check out everything else. So first up, let's check out the high-grade Typheus. So jumping on into the aesthetics now, we're going to be starting off with the high-grade Typheus Gundam itself, the actual mobile suit. Now, there is a little bit of information in the manual about this right here and what it says, and you can pause this whenever you want to read it yourself. But what it says about the Typheus Gundam itself is, there once was a gunpla named for Typheus, a giant monster of Greek mythology. It had a simple chassis, fine-tuned from the melee-orientated Raphael Gundam, but conjured not even an iota of monstrous presence from its slim, elegant construction. However, by combining with the Mobile Fortress Kutan twin dragon type, the Typheus Gundam can manifest its true, massive form. When it does come to the model kit itself, this is one of the most unique looking kits I have ever seen. First off, when it comes to the color scheme here, we've seen plenty of kits that I can only describe as that Japanese lacquerware bowl color, as in red, gold, and black, kind of like we would have seen on some kits like the various versions of the Amatsu Mina. However, the color distribution here is ridiculously unique. It's almost predominantly in gold. The black is definitely a major player here as well, and we do have the red highlights of the body and the feet. The color distribution, like nothing I've seen before. Overall though, the plastics in here do feel a little bit on the cheap side. The gold injection does look quite cheap, and the red plastic does a little bit too. You know, you can do a bunch of things to kind of counteract that. I would highly recommend painting the gold with gold paint. That would really elevate this entirely, and even something like a matte top coat would probably make the whole thing look that little bit better. Like I mentioned, I did panel line this, so without the panel lines, the knees and the shoulders look even plainer. And if I had one complaint with this kit, even though it's fine in general, it's the fact that the shoulders are just so plain. They are just two bits of plastic, that's the front and the back, so from the sides or from below they do look a little bit on the cheap side. But then again, this is just something that slots into a larger piece in general, so I guess it's not that big a deal. So taking a little bit of a closer look at everything, so I'm just going to slide it over here so you can see it side by side with the original art, or should I say the art of the actual Typheus Gundam. And straight away what stands out to me is the fact that the gold just, in a way I can imagine it in a kind of a nice brushed champagne gold, as opposed to what we're seeing right here, which is a very yellow injection gold. It's not the worst, but I've never really found the gold to really look that good. Of course, this is easier to work with than if it was plated, but if you're going to do one thing with this kit, I would highly recommend painting that gold. Overall, when it does come to the stickers on here, they're not that bad. We've got some in the face, that's the eyes and the head camera. Now, I will mention the parts underneath these are in the same shade of green plastic we're seeing in the chest right there. So that does mean you could actually maintain some level of the actual clear parts, but you would have to paint the black around them. Inside the chest, we got a reflective one to reflect the light back out through that little shiny part, and all these little black recessed parts that shine a lot more than the plastic, those are stickers as well, so not too bad. The overall detail is what you'd expect from a 2010 kit. Like I mentioned, in under the shoulders, not looking so awesome, and the same with all of the under sections of any of the skirting armors as well. They just look very basic and old school. So when it does come to the other issues you find on model kits, so that's the seam lines, the nub lines, and the mold lines, for the most part I don't really find much in the lines of nubs. Now I think I double snipped this with the God Hand for the most part. There are some nubs there, but they don't show up too crazily, so that's definitely not too bad. I would expect to have seen a little bit more when it comes to mold lines on a more retro kit like this, we do have some at the upper arm, which is pretty bad, but besides that, none really showing up. When it comes to seams, these are quite prominent, everything's split into two pieces, so we do have large ones up the back of the legs, and these ones in the forearms, which for whatever reason, I just can't get to close up. Like I squeeze them like that and they just open back up again. I've taken it apart to take a look at the polycap inside because sometimes those can get in the way, but I don't know, a little bit old school funky. So finally moving on to the size comparison, and this is a pretty tall Gundam right here, and that's not even including all the stuff we'll be adding on later on. So there it is side by side with every other Gundam model kit that came out in 2023. So it is quite tall. Just to show you exactly how tall, there it is side by side with the Calibarn, and there it is beside a standard size Gundam, which is the RX-78-2. So that is a tall Gundam. So now moving on to the articulation of the Typheus Gundam itself, and like I mentioned, this is based off of some older tech, but it does feel solid out of the box, which is good considering how much weight it does have to hold on to. Let's check out how it does in the pose. So getting into the pose as usual, and what we get right here is about average for an old school high grade. It really isn't the worst. It's not a nice posing experience, like it's not a lot of fun, and it's not something that elicits me to just want to get into a whole bunch of poses. There are a lot of hollow parts when you actually do move it around and you actually get to see those, but at the end of the day, this is just going to be a core of a different kit. Not necessarily something that you'd use on its own. The side-to-side pivot on the legs is pretty bad, and overall, everything is quite limited. For example, we've got a limited elbow bend right here, and that is all we get at the ab crunch, and the neck really doesn't do a lot better. Quite basic. So now jumping into the accessories, and here's everything that comes inside the box, and there is a ton of stuff in here. As well as the Typheus Gundam itself, we also have the absolutely massive Mobile Fortress Kutan Twin Dragon type. On top of that, we've got a pair of these Witch from Mercury style stands. That is kind of 4 in total if you take them in half. A whole bunch of wires and different adapter segments for all the different stuff this can do. An absolute load of these reflector bits. Now this is just about half of them or so, because there are some on the Kutan Twin Dragon type stored away, the closed up ones, and finally we do have a beam rifle as well, but there's so many different combinations of everything that we're seeing in here. So the next thing that we have inside of this box is this right here, which is the Mobile Fortress Kutan Twin Dragon type. Now this is a variant of the Kutan booster from Iron-Blooded Orphans. The whole thing, as far as I know, is on the runners in here in a variant color scheme of red and black, but we do have some nice parts that are brand new for this that give it an over-the-top awesome look, making it into the Twin Dragon type, the Twin Dragons being the shields up front. So this can be displayed just like what you're seeing right here, which is as a separate unit to the actual Typheus Gundam itself. It doesn't do a whole lot while in this mold, but it does look pretty cool. We get a full stand included as well, and this thing is just covered in boosters. You can see the Psycho Gundam arms, and overall it's ridiculously unique. Like I mentioned, in this format, you're not really going to be doing a whole lot with it. You can kind of move the cannons around a little bit. They can kind of move up and down. They don't turn side to side, so it is just the up and down. But besides that, the only real movement in this is in order to get it into the transformed mode. We do have a bit of a cockpit right up front right here. That looks like it might glow under UV light. And like I mentioned, what makes this into the Twin Dragon type is these sections up front. Underneath those, you can see all of those reflector bits stored in under the Twin Dragons. But besides that, this mode right here is basically just a big old storage of parts. As for the parts we have for using with the Typheus Gundam itself, first off, we do have a beam rifle in here. Now this right here is just right off the Raphael Gundam's runners, so this you would have seen before. It's very simple. It's just 2 parts slapped together with a little bit of a sight section in there, but this isn't done with a sticker, so a little bit impressed by that. Equipping this is super simple. It's just the usual old school routine of getting that hand ready and just sliding it on, well, just like that. Ooh. Maybe a little better than that. So at first I thought I just made a mistake right there, but then I tried again. And then again. This is extremely odd. It only really fits when you pop it in the entire way. So this little trigger section right here is required for this actually fitting. This is the only part that fits. So the hand and the weapon design here is pretty poor. So that right there is what the weapon looks like in a pose. This is a very streamlined looking weapon, very simplified, and does, well, it's like a GN cannon slimmed down, which I guess it is. When this is not in use, it cannot be stored on the actual unit itself, but we do have a section on the Kutan that you can actually attach it onto. Now this can't be done when it's on this stand like you're seeing right here. If you actually pop it off and then attach this into where it attaches, you can see that it doesn't actually fit, because it gets in the way of where the stand attaches on. So this is more so when we've got the Typheus Gundam in the Typheus Gundam Chimera mode. So that is not the only bit of equipment we're actually able to use with our Typheus Gundam right here before we make it into the Chimera. Grabbing onto the Kutan right here, we can use a couple of other things. First off, you can use these right here, which are the smoothbore cannons from Iron-Blooded Orphans, and we can actually use the Dragon as well by removing it just like so. Now, it doesn't mention it in the actual instructions, but I suppose you could just use the smoothbore gun in the hand just like so, like you would with Gundam Barbatos. It's just a standard little peg, so yeah, you could just pop it in just like so if you wanted to. But that's not the way that you can kind of use it on this. So in order to use the smoothbore cannon the way it says in the instructions, we're going to actually have to grab the Kutan once again, and there's this little segment right here which is part of the backpack attachment point for attaching the Chimera section on. So you just pop this off like so. This can then attach onto the back of the Typheus by flipping these thrusters upwards. It slots on like so. Then you grab this little adapter segment which slots onto either or side. It's the right hand side in the manual, so I'm going to stick with that. And then you can just slot the smooth bore cannon on like this big old shoulder cannon. Now there's nothing stopping you from doing this on both sides. I'm just going with what is in the instructions. But there is a little slidey peg section on the side right here, which is identical to the other side. There is another adapter, so you could do that if you wanted to. Next up in here then, we're able to use one of the dragons as a shield, and like I mentioned, just like with the smoothbore cannon, there's nothing really stopping you from using two at once. I'm just going exactly with what is in the instructions just to demonstrate what these do. So first up, we do have the dragon right here. You can see what makes it a dragon. We've got our eye right there, and these sections can open not unlike a jaw with these little reflector bits inside. There's all the moving parts we would have seen with the Kutan back when it came out. Wow. See clips back when it came out in Iron-Blooded Orphan, so it does everything that you would have seen back then. The only difference is the top has been changed around here a little bit with parts that do say Psycho Gundam Mk.II, but the rest of the functional aspects, same as before. So in here we do have two of these adapters, so like I mentioned, you can do this on both arms if you want to. This is your standard kind of shield adapter which attaches into the rear of the arm just like so. And we do have two attachment points, one on the side and one around back. Now those are some big attachment points to have a choice. If you have one of them, you still have a ball joint. If you do use one of them, you still have one big crazy ball joint poking out. So it turns out you don't actually need the arm segment that would have came with the Kutan here. It's just the dragon head aspect of this. So it's just a big old shield. You just pop it off the Kutan arm like so, and then it attaches onto the arm like this, and that's what it looks like. It holds on perfectly well. You can still pose it with it attached. You can open up the jaws, close them up as well. And we do have those reflector bits on the underside. So this is what this kit looks like, fully loaded up as the Typheus Gundam. So this is an option, on top of the fact that we can have it as it is on its own, or the Chimera, which we're about to take a look at. Finally, it's time to get this converted into the Typheus Gundam Chimera by combining the Typheus Gundam with the Mobile Fortress Kutan Twin Dragon type. Now, once you actually get used to this is extremely simple. There is a little bit of a parts formation when it comes to the leg segments. Those are attached on by these kind of joints right here. So you just attach these on when you're changing this into the Kutan, and you take them off when it's, well, turning into the Chimera. Attaching the Gundam into it is very simple. Just slides upwards into the backpack section when it has the backpack adapter on, and then we've got this little part that just hinges in from underneath into the usual stand peg hole in the crotch of the Gundam. It holds in perfect, and that all works really well. Then you just attach the twin dragon legs onto it. You do have to remove a segment, which we just saw, and add on another little adapter for attaching it into the knees. And this is a 2-point connection connected into the knees and onto the feet. This is super simple. Then you just rearrange it all around, throw those smoothbore guns up top, and this is what it looks like complete. And as for what it says about the Typheus inside the manual, it says, the final form of the Typheus Gundam, taking the mobile suit as its core unit, docked with the Kutan Twin Dragon type as a HAL unit. Despite being 1/44th scale, it boasts the awesome firepower and propulsion capabilities of a master-grade class gunpla. Overall, this does look absolutely ridiculous, and it is exactly what it says. It's a chimera. It's three, well, you could almost say four kits slapped together. It's the Raphael Gundam in the core, the Kutan booster from Iron-Blooded Orphans making up a lot of the body, and the future release of the Psycho Gundam Mk.II for the arms. Then we have all the different little parts that came inside this kit to make it into the Typheus Gundam, which is essentially a fourth kit on top. Overall, I'm a lot more impressed than I thought I would be. So that little blurb we just read mentioned that it now has the power of a Master Grade Gundam. So there it is side by side with a Master Grade Gundam, and as you can see, it is in around the kind of size of it, actually a decent bit bigger. Now this brings me back to one thing that always confuses me, and that's when it comes to the various Gundam Build series. Everyone always seems to use high grades. I know the Build Strike had an RG system, and I'm not sure if it was meant to be a high grade or a real grade, and there's never really any rules or mention of why people use high grades as opposed to master grades, perfect grades, mega sizes, and all of that sort of jazz. I'm so confused by what the hell is going on? So when it comes to the look and the overall aesthetics of the Typheus Gundam Chimera, this isn't necessarily going to be everyone's cup of tea. It's a unique color scheme, especially the gold on there. And as far as mobile suits or mobile armors go, this looks like nothing else. It is unique, and that is its strongest point. Out of box, it does look a little bit on the plain side to some degree. Even with a bit of panel lining, it does look a little bit lost on here, but even in the manual, it does recommend getting some extra detail on it, decals, etc. But like I mentioned, out of the box, it will look a little bit on the plain side, but ridiculously and utterly unique, without a doubt. So there is one thing on this that definitely needs to be looked at in depth, and that of course is the brand new arm, because these are for a kit that does not exist yet, which is the Psycho Gundam Mk.II, which looks like this right here. So I will admit, I 100% thought we were going to be getting the arms off the Hazel gigantic arms, but that is not the case. Now, this is not perfect by any means. This little segment in here, this whole assembly, is inclined to kind of fall apart, kind of disconnect when moving it around, which is a little bit on the crappy side. And you're not able to like press it back together by pressing on the sides here, because the inside part is, well, it's different. We also have some sliding mechanisms and moving mechanisms inside of this, which will be for the transformation on the Psycho Gundam Mk.II. So I think we're pretty much guaranteed one. They wouldn't have put that much effort in, because there's parts in this that really just don't have any function on this particular model kit, so they've fully planned out that Mk.II. We have a full rotation at the upper arm here. We've got a nice elbow bend because we've got this recessing part inside of that. We also have a little bit of rotation inside of that too, which is nice and expressive. The wrist joint right here is a ball joint with a hinge, and there is another little bit of a sliding kind of transforming part. So the whole transformation aspect of the arms of the Mk.II is here. We also have little holes in the tops of the fingers, which will be for beams, I assume. This finger can move on a ball joint. All of these have ball joints, as well as one point of flexion, so it can kind of become a bit of a fist, just like that. So I think we'll be seeing a Psycho Gundam Mk.II sometime this year. So now moving on to the accessories we can use with the Typheus Gundam Chimera. First off, we do have what will also be probably part of this future coming Psycho Gundam Mk.II, and that's the ability to use the arms as Psychomu weapons. So if you just detach the arms at the elbow right here, we do have some included wires. We have two sets of wires, and we use the single wire for with these arms in a very Xeon kind of way. These wires have two plastic ends, and these actually build up quite well. You actually have two sections to them, so you feed the wire in, bend it round, and bring it back into it so it locks in perfectly. So these aren't those sort of wires that'll fall in and out while you're posing. They are locked in there. They've got good posing potential, they're good and strong, and as for those plastic bits at both end, one attaches onto the upper arm, one into the forearm section like so, and this is what they look like. We also have a sliding segment in the forearm as well, which houses a little 3mm hole, so you can attach these onto the included stands. The included stands are okay, they're a little bit wiggly, but if you actually get them posed just right with the strong wire, these will hold perfectly, and this looks pretty cool. These hands are very, very poseable, extremely over the top, and the kind of look you get out of this is incredible. And that is not just it. We also have some more Psychomu weapons in here, so let's check those out and those are down on the legs. So using these twin dragons as Saikamu weapons is pretty much the same thing we just did. You pop them off just like so, they pop off these pivoting sections on the knees, and we get this wire section for using with them. This is well, what can I say? This looks like it came right out of some PC parts. This set of wires right here is basically about 5 wires, maybe 6, attached together in a kind of ribbon style. This attaches into the back of the twin dragons just like so, and then onto the knee like this. It does exactly the same thing. We can attach these onto stands as well. 4 of these smaller stands are included. They are a little bit jank, they like to fall over, but they do get the job done at the end of the day. And that right there is what the Typheus Gundam Chimera will look like with all of those weapons going at once, and that just looks absolutely ridiculous. It's now kind of spread out to take up a lot more space. So if this already was going to take up a lot of space on your shelf already, displayed like this will make it look even bigger and badder. And that's not even it. We still have those reflector bits in, on, under these jaws of the twin dragons. So next up in here we have the reflector bits. When these are stored, they're stored on the underside of the dragons, or the dragon heads, just like so. So when they're attached onto the leg, this is what it looks like. You can just pop these out just like so. There's 8 of these stored away, but we do have 2 spare. We also have 8 of the fully deployed versions and 2 spare of those, and these can be displayed on the included action bases just like so. You can also have a combination. So what you've got in here is the stored version that looks like so. The deployed versions, these look like that with open rear ends and open front ends, and then you can combine the various parts. There's 2 parts to each of these for these flying variants with the closed front, just like so. So pretty much the last thing we can do in here is make these absolutely ginormous versions of the stands for using with these reflector bits. You just attach all 3 of the longest segments together on each one, attach the base together to make a larger base for making a pair of these stands, and then you just attach all the little reflector bits onto it, and this is what you get in the end. So this is quite effective. It is nice to actually have something to display the bits in flight included with an actual Gundam kit, so that is pretty cool. This is usually something you would see sold separately. So overall, there is a whole lot you can do with what is included inside of this box. Let's have the Typheus Gundam on its own, the Kutan on its own, combine them together, use the Saikamu arms, the Saikamu legs, or use these bits. There is a whole lot of choice. So anyway, that right there is it for the review, and this to me is a silver tier kit and a definite example of quantity is not better than quality. Overall, it is quite cool, it's extremely unique, and this is build diverse through and through. Even the sketchy quality is a very, well, build diverse thing. When it comes to the aesthetics, this is not going to be everyone's cup of tea. It's a unique look, it's over the top, and it does have an injection gold, which doesn't look very fancy. There are a lot of hollow parts here and there, and the Raphael Gundam itself does have a lot of old school issues. However, what you do get in the end is very big, very unique, and probably one of the most unique looking kits to have come out this year. There definitely is no faulting this kit when it does come to accessories. This comes with droves and droves of stuff and tons of options. So if you're someone who just likes to get a kit that you can change around and change around and change around, this is one of the kits that you can do that with. There are so many options. So if you like the look, this definitely comes with the stuff. Finally, then when it does come to the build strength and the articulation, it is okay. It's as dated as you'd expect it to be. Overall, throughout the review, the biggest issue I found is the fact that the legs can't really hold up the massive legs, so they always just loll there. If you try and get it into any kind of a position, maybe spread the legs out or bend the knees, they just flop right back down again. So that isn't really the most awesome thing, but you can fix that yourself. And of course, if you don't like the color on this, you can paint it too. Anyway, if you do want one of your own, link is down there in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to come back for more Gunpla reviews, and I'll see you next time. As always, this video right here would not have been possible without each and every single one of you guys, so thank you so much for watching, and as usual, special thanks to those of you who helped me out over on the channel memberships right here and on Patreon, including Abraxas, Caleb Engelhart, Dashil Marmion, Go Little Rockstar, Joe, Org59061, 10 Soldier YT, and Van Fawn.